Do you want to hear a scary story? For competitive Pokemon players, this is about as frightening as it gets. In the 2017 Pokemon Advanced World Championship Tournament, a random game in the second round would end up becoming more infamous than any other. The replay was so horrifying that BKC would create a commentary video he classified as psychological horror and surrealism. At the end of the video, he stops talking entirely and simply lets the match play out with disturbing audio and displeasing visual filters which underscore the insanity of the situation unfolding in front of the viewer. Let me set the stage for our campfire tale. October 8th, 2017. Halloween is still a few weeks away, Miiverse is coming to an end, and League of Legends still sucks. And so what else could our protagonist do but play in the first day of the Advanced World Championship tournament that year? In a best of three, Samuel Best and Markop9923 would find themselves each taking a game off one another. The winner of this game would move on to the next round, while the loser would not. The beginning of the game will probably leave you bored, but every horror story begins fairly unassuming. In fact, the most unlikely occurrence is that nothing unlikely happens at all for the first 36 turns. Markop has been slowly improving his advantage against Samuel, locking him into a corner with seemingly no chance of victory. No critical hits or misses have happened for either player, and no secondary effects like Ice Beam have triggered. On this turn though, Markop would miss an 85% accurate Meteor Mash. They say when a meteor, a shooting star, passes by overhead, if you make a wish with all your heart, that wish will come true. But that's just a superstition, right? On the next turn, Samuel's ace Pokemon comes in. His Samuelments.
Shut up!
And what transpires is roughly the same as watching someone get struck by lightning in slow motion. Salamence takes out Metagross with a 90% accurate Rock Slide. This Salamence is choice banded, it cannot use any other moves, and so it seems obvious that Markop's victory is still comfortably assured. Both players exchanged GGs in the chat, but the game was far from over. Markop uses Protect to stall for more time and have his leftovers heal him, but Samuel keeps fighting. Markop sacrifices his Zapdos to allow Swampert to gain back even more HP, but Samuel says, "Guess it comes down to flinch," referring to Rock Slide's 30% chance to flinch. But this alone wouldn't be enough. Rock Slide does about 13% to Swampert, and Swampert heals up 6.25% each turn. Because Swampert can protect every other turn, Rock Slide alone will run out of PP long before Swampert would normally faint, as Swampert would lose almost no HP as the turns go by. And on the other turns when Swampert isn't protecting, he has a 70% chance to end the game with an Ice Beam. Salamence is not only able to hit Swampert every single turn for 9 turns, he flinches Swampert every turn possible within those turns. And he gets a lucky critical, which is 1 out of 16 in this generation. Still, Samuel seems to have no way to win as Salamence runs out of PP on the 49th turn. As the dust settles, the chance to flinch is gone, and Markop is 1 turn away from victory, either by the good grace of God or the result of a deal with the devil. Salamence is able to land a critical hit with struggle, granting him just barely the necessary power to win. After the game, Samuel would post in the tourney thread, "Won the most undeserved G3 ever versus Markop. GG." Markop would reply with a :O emoticon and GG's. Props to both players for handling that well. While Samuel would get knocked out of the tournament in a later round, Markop would end up winning a Masters tournament the next year, which perhaps indicates that Markop had a chance to win the tournament if not for these abysmal odds. But how lucky really was Samuel Best here? It's a 50-turn game, but it might be fun just to look at Samuel's practical odds after turn 40, when his path to victory was so narrow that we don't have to consider any extremely unlikely hypotheticals. After turn 40, Salamence never misses against Swampert in a total of 9 rock slides, but Swampert protects from 5 of these, so I won't count them for now. I was curious whether or not the accuracy check was even taking place, so I tested it and found out that yes, you can miss against a protecting opponent. Samuel is just irrelevantly lucky enough that he never does. These 4 important rock slides against Swampert all hit and cause a flinch, which can be represented as 0.9 times 0.3, all to the power of 4. Struggle had a 100% chance to hit, but he needed at least 2 of these 5 moves to crit in order for Struggle to have had enough power to kill on the last turn. To find out the odds of getting at least 2 out of 5 criticals, we first calculate the odds of getting no criticals out of 5 instances, and the odds of getting not even a single critical are 1 minus the chance to crit. Then we take that number and put it to 5th power. Next, we need to calculate the odds of getting exactly 1 critical, and we can get that by doing 5, that's our number of times we can try, times the odds of a critical, times the odds of no critical to the 4th power, which equals 0.24. Finally, we do 1 minus our first result, minus our second result to achieve this, 0.3440 and onward, or about a 3.4% chance. Before we move on though, let's double check this number by adding the odds of getting a critical 2 out of 5 times, 3 out of 5 times, 4 out of 5 times, and 5 out of 5 times together, which should give us the same result, right? To calculate exactly 2 out of 5 criticals looks like this, with 5 being the number of potential criticals and the 2s being the number of criticals that we're calculating for. Already we can tell that our first method was probably correct given how close this number is, but let's continue this method anyway. 3 out of 5 criticals can be calculated by doing the same thing with the number 2 replaced with 3 in all cases, and 4 out of 5 criticals is the same, but with the 3 now replaced by 4. And 5 out of 5 criticals is the easiest to find, simply 0.625 to the 5th power. And after adding all 4 of these results together, we get 0.0344 and onward, exactly the same as what we had gotten through our first method. And yes, that was a needlessly complex way to check our math, but frankly, I find this way to be more intuitive. Of course, they both work, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that it worked and that I knew that I did it right. Now we can simply multiply this number with the combined odds of flinching and accuracy that we had from earlier, which gives us 0.0053 times 0.344 equals 0.00018, or about 0.018%, or 1 in 5,469. Nice. These are the absolute odds for Samuel to win as of turn 40, but if we pull back 4 turns, we can see that Samuel was actually luckier than this. Samuel's luck required to evade the Meteor Mash here is easy to calculate. The odds of at least 1 Meteor Mash missing is 0.15 times 1.85 equals 0.2775. Of course, Samuel can still win here even if Markov had hit the first Meteor Mash, but it would have required a critical hit with Rock Slide into a flinch, or 2 Rock Slide flinches with high damage rolls, or 3 with lower damage rolls. Anything less than that, and Salamence would have been featured in a Hydraulic Press video instead of this one. Salamence also hits a Rock Slide against the Zapdos, but even if he did miss against the Zapdos, he still could have potentially won as it would have been a speed tie. Again though, these hypotheticals don't need to be factored in now, as we're checking for how lucky he was, as opposed to how lucky he needed to be to win. To find Samuel's accuracy here, we simply multiply another 0.9 times another 0.9 to get 0.81. Now that we have all the numbers, all we have to do are multiply them together. That's going to be 0.81 times 0.2775 times 0.00018. And that equals 0.00041. Yeah, that's really lucky to get in a tournament. In the context of the whole game, Samuel's odds to have gotten at least this lucky were a lot higher, but not likely by any means. To calculate his odds over the entire game though, we need to disregard our prior calculations and do things a little differently. First, we'll consider Samuel's accuracy, which is quite simple as he never misses. On turn 14, he hits a rock slide, on turn 28, he hits a rock slide, on turn 30, he hits a toxic, on turn 38, he hits a rock slide, and on turn 40, he hits a rock slide, and then he hits the 4 final rock slides against Swampert. To calculate this, we simply do 0.9 to the 8th power times 0.85, which equals roughly 0.365. Samuel also could have gotten 15 relevant criticals, and he did get 2 of them. Sure, the 2 that he did get were really important, but any of these would have significantly benefited Samuel. Using the method we learned earlier, we first calculate his chance of no criticals, then his chance of 1 critical, and wait, they're the same number. Why are they the same number? Can Slugma double check on that? The odds of no criticals out of 15 is the same as the odds of 1 out of 15. That fills me with existential dread, but I accept it as truth. And finally we do 1 minus our first result minus our second result to achieve 0.24. Moving on to his evasion odds, Samuel evades 1 Meteor Mash out of the 2 Meteor Mashes and is hit by 2 Toxics and 1 Megahorn. Fortunately, the accuracy of all of these in Gen 3 is 85%, so we can treat these dodges as equal and calc them together quite easily. His odds to evade 1 or more of 5 are simply 1 minus his odds of evading none of them, which is 1 minus 0.85 to the 5th power, which equals 0.556. Markov also never gets a relevant critical. He gets the 1 against Celebi, but Celebi fainted from Toxic on that turn after a normal hit anyway. For reference, a relevant critical is anytime a critical hit would cause that specific turn to end with a different outcome. Markov had 5 chances to get relevant criticals. This means that Samuel's odds of dodging all relevant criticals was 0.9375 to the 5th power, or 0.72, or about 72%. We're almost done, now all we have to do is account for his secondary effect odds. Samuel's flinches only could have possibly occurred in the final turns of the game, so it's a simple 0.3 to the 4th power, or 0.0081 for that. But Samuel actually got unlucky with some missed activations, 2 of Freeze and 2 of Paralysis, all at 10%. Markov also has a chance to inflict 1 Paralysis from Thunderbolt, which could have possibly changed the game in his favor, but the lack of activation allows him to hit a Toxic on the next turn, which is often much better, and well, these 5 moments throw a wrench in the analysis, as they're very complex in themselves and they can dramatically affect the course of the game, or they could do absolutely nothing. In the interests of uploading this video on Halloween, which is tomorrow, they just won't be thrown into the calculations. But keep in mind that around 30-ish% of the time, Samuel could have gotten luckier in a way that was probably not relevant. Taking what we do have and throwing it into the number cruncher, the rough and tumble odds to be at least as lucky as Samuel is... Yep, that's about a 0.3% chance, or just 1 in 348. If you watched the first version of this video, this might seem shocking, and it's pretty shocking to me. It seems hard to be able to go from such extreme odds in the final turns of the game to what is an unlikely but not super insane occurrence when looking at it in its totality. Oh, that was unlucky. I just landed Toxic on the Slug Scribe button, activating its Guts ability. It also knows Rock Slide, by the way, so we should probably do something about that before it sweeps us.